In warning you, touch me and my chain will teach you a lesson. A big surprise. Old Q shouts, like in a wrestling match. The other pulls out a knife, wanting to vanish for good, but our hero arrives, doing a complete 180. They fled in their car despite Lao Q and colleagues' best efforts to block them. What desperation drove them to this? Old Q quickly found the answer in the container, see a whole box of flour. Now that's what you call a real headache material. But Lao Q, back in the car, urged his colleague to sell the dirty stuff. Seeing his colleague hesitate, Lao Q used every trick in the book to convince him, and to his surprise, his colleague quickly thought it made sense and not only agreed to sell the goods. Wanted to hook Lao Q up with the buyer, but when home, he tossed and turned in bed. Who wouldn't be nervous? Seeing his wife and kids asleep, he had no choice. The next day, his colleague brought him to meet with the mob boss, Lao He, but chatting in the car was a bit tricky. Lao He was on the same page, and as the car left, the wheels of fate began to turn. At Lao He's base, he heated the cargo bottom with a lighter. His trick, pretty clever. Then he sniffed it, confirming it was quality. Lao He offered half the market price for your trophy. His colleague motioned for Lao Q to accept, which he readily did. But after drinking, he chatted on and oddly asked Lao He for his last name. Lao He smiled and answered him one by one, and to Lao Q's surprise, he discovered they shared a common ancestor. The alcohol gave him confidence, raising his voice. His colleague advised him to be quiet, but didn't notice Lao He's turbulent eyes. But the next second, it was obvious he had too much to drink. Lao He didn't pursue it, but Lao Q couldn't swallow his pride. Next day, visiting his father, Lao He met an old acquaintance at the door. It turned out that Lao Q was not only acquainted with his father, but had actually helped him back in the day. This was relief for Lao Q, and as he left, he still knew his place. After receiving the payment from the last shipment, he invited Lao He out. Lao He agreed anyway. After a long separation, Lao Q couldn't help rambling again. He told Lao He that seeing him was like love at first sight, leaving the gorgeous girl nearby utterly speechless, while Lao Q continued to babble on. Lao He quickly called over his little brother to help Lao Q to the bathroom, only to unknowingly bump into an old boss. The boss still treats him like a joke in public. Back then, he had to watch his superior's face, but not anymore. Lao Q toasted everyone but skipped his boss, then poked fun at him. He even made special jokes about his boss' fabulous fashion sense, making the boss face turn sideways in anger, and he could finally no longer hold back. This was precisely what he wanted, as the place was crawling with gangsters. Lao Q felt completely confident. With the help of the mob's second-in-command, his boss was quickly brought down. Lao Q stepped forward and kicked him hard, releasing decades of pent-up frustrations at that moment. After venting, Lao Q ripped his shirt and slammed it down, venting years of resentment. At that moment, a fierce and dominating expression crossed his face, and Lao He observed it all, knowing that although his uncle was a bit unreliable, he could still be a trustworthy. Family ties are definitely more reliable. After teaming up with Lao Q started living a better life and finally moved to a new house. Although the road ahead would be bumpy, as long as his family had a good life, it was all worth it. The reason Lao Q was that he understood the principles of business. As long as the mob grew strong, a legitimate side would follow suit eventually. Thanks to this capacity, Lao Q naturally became the vice president of the gang, and his life underwent a radical transformation, ushering in an era where bad guys thrived. However, as the gambling business flourished, Lao Q's ambitions started to swell too. One day, he went to a spot to relax and unexpectedly ran into an acquaintance. The acquaintance was the small-time boss. Polite on the surface, he didn't respect his former clerk. Lao Q nodded slightly, as strong man commands respect. His acquaintance's eyes lit up at the sight. The waiter entered with a tray, and Lao Q dove in without hesitation. Blushing, the waiter left, realizing Lao Q had changed. So he began to reduce his airs and asked Lao Q for a favor. He had invested in a dance hall that was packed every night, yet the dance hall always lost money. Why? Female shareholders colluded with gangs, siphoning all profits by month end. Although the acquaintance had some power, facing the mob boss Ban Hu, he could only swallow his pride in pain. Seeing the bustling business at the dance hall, Lao Q certainly didn't want to miss this opportunity and immediately informed Lao He. Little did he know Ban Hu was once under Lao He. Lao He couldn't step in, confusing Lao Q. Hearing this, Lao Q teased, "Isn't that just a lesson you are giving me?" Clearly, he was misinterpreting the situation. However, the boss needed a reason to step in, and Lao Q soon had an idea. Being good friends with Lao He, it wouldn't be hard to find one. Lao Q called in his brother-in-law's Xiaomo for some adventures. But Xiaomo got cold feet upon seeing this. Given his unreliable demeanor, Lao Q gave him a strong talking to. "You better step up and shine like I do." After getting out, Lao Q, guided by an acquaintance, was introduced as a new shareholder to the room's door, feeling anxious. Once inside, the acquaintance introduced him to the female shareholder, and Lao Q was mesmerized by her graceful demeanor. Lao Q greeted Ban Hu at the opposite table, but was coldly ignored, instantly freezing the atmosphere in the room. Clearly, they wanted to give him a scare. Lao Q had no choice but to go all in and get right to the point. Demanding to look at the dance hall's profit reports and insisting on sending someone over for oversight.